Right, hello everyone. Good to see some familiar faces and hello to some of the new ones. Brian, hello. Carolyn, I see you there. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Louis Hahn, VP here at the Arcview Group. If you're new to Arcview, we are the cannabis and hemp industry's oldest and largest investor network. Since 2010, we and our members have been championing the cannabis and hemp industries through investment, education, and community. This year, we've also launched a consulting practice, venture group, and a FINRA registered broker-dealer to help further our mission. It's great to have you all on today as we host our first ever town hall with a spotlight on the state of New Jersey. As we get into the holiday season and near the end of the year, it's a time to reflect on 2020 and look at what's ahead. Despite the challenges we've seen this year, it's been a pleasantly surprising boon year for the cannabis and hemp industries. Cannabis was deemed an essential industry, and states like Colorado, Illinois, Oregon, and Ohio saw record monthly sales. And all 5 states that had a cannabis vote on the ballot this year passed with flying colors, from Montana, South Dakota, Arizona, Mississippi, and of course, New Jersey. Proving that once again, just like in 2016, cannabis is one of the few issues Americans can agree on. On the investment front, we're seeing quite a bit of activity there as well. Aphria and Tilray announced just yesterday a merger deal to create one of the biggest cannabis companies on the planet. Weedmaps is set to go public. Jay-Z is also jumping in as part of an acquisition of 2 major California cannabis companies, Caliva and Left Coast Ventures. This year, we've also seen social unrest from the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and a focus on criminal justice reform. While the cannabis movement and industry still have a lot to improve on, we can celebrate some wins in social justice this year too. Richard DeLisi, who's perhaps the longest serving inmate for a non-violent cannabis conviction, who served 30 years out of a 90-year sentence, was released this year. The MORE Act, which is a bill introduced to decriminalize cannabis at the federal level, passed the House just 2 weeks ago. The United Nations also removed cannabis from the top of its list of narcotics of addictive substances with little to no therapeutic benefit, which further cements cannabis on the international stage as having a legitimate place in society. The state of New Jersey reflects these national and international trends as well. And this town hall is timely, with New Jersey to vote on its cannabis bill tomorrow, weather permitting. The top 2 questions asked by the hundreds of people who signed up for today's town hall were about social equity and regulations. But closely following behind were questions about jobs, the future of medical cannabis, and the impact to surrounding states. So we'll be exploring these topics today in a little bit of a unique format. We've curated and selected members of the cannabis community from around America and the world to speak up and ask their questions live to our panel of experts and thought leaders. In this time where we can't normally get together, we wanted to create a more engaging experience and hear directly from those interested in the newly minted legal New Jersey market. We hope you'll learn a lot in the next hour of our program. Now with that, I won't delay us any further. I'd like to bring on all of our speakers today. Go ahead and turn your cameras on and wave hello, everybody. Hello, hello. And if it's useful for you tuning in, if you want to change your view to gallery view, you could do that by clicking on the top right-hand corner of your screen and choosing gallery view so you can see all of our faces at once, or you can leave it in active speaker view, and then the camera will pan to whoever is actively speaking at the time. And now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Diana Wainu, incoming chair of the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, and currently senior policy advisor and associate counsel to Governor Phil Murphy, to respond to our first question. Hello, Diana.
Hi, Louis. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, to ask our first question, I'd like to bring on John Paolo Veronese. So it's great to have you on with us. So can you tell us about what exactly your question is for Diana today, and more about your background, your motivations behind the question?
Okay, well, great. Well, first of all, let me thank you, Louis, and the whole Arcview team for putting together this town hall. You have some great speakers today, and really excited about it. A little about me: I got involved in the legalization of cannabis, actually starting in 1990 with my father, who passed of cancer and used cannabis as something that really helped with his therapy. And in 1991, my mom, who was president of the Board of Supervisors, authored the first ordinance as well as Proposition O for medical cannabis. During that process, I was able to meet Dennis Perone, who in California we consider the godfather of medical cannabis. I was able to work with him on 215. He authored that, which made it statewide in California, medical cannabis. Then in 2016, Proposition 64, I definitely was heavily involved in that and was very excited that we passed it. Shortly after that, I co-founded a company called Petaluma Hills Farms, which is a cultivation in Sonoma County, which grows some of the best cannabis in the world. And currently, I am the vice president of Truth Enterprises, which is a B2B company based out of California that we operate throughout the whole state. So my first question is, which is very exciting for Diana, is everybody wants to know about what regulations New Jersey is going to be implementing. And if you could please, could you talk a little about the ballot measure that the New Jersey voters just voted on?
Sure. Thanks, GP. And thank you to Arcview for hosting this forum and for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here amongst so many familiar faces. So in November, New Jerseyans went to their ballot and made their voices heard and voted in favor of legalizing cannabis for regulation and creating a regulated industry here in the Garden State. Really, this was the result of years of work from advocates and activists on the ground, directly impacted people who shared their stories and made it known exactly the harm and the toll that marijuana prohibition has taken on our communities. And so I'm really excited that 2.7 million people voted for abandoning prohibition policies and moving towards a path of equity. And so from the ballot question, and then our legislature then was tasked with putting pen to paper and really writing out what the law is going to say on this issue. And so our legislature is still very hard at work doing that. But as Louis mentioned, there's legislation that is pending right now and currently scheduled for a vote very soon. And so after legislation is passed and then acted into law, then the Cannabis Regulatory Commission will begin its work and issuing rules and regulations that lay the foundation for how we're going to build a cannabis industry in New Jersey. So the regulations really are going to cover a wide range of topics, everything from security requirements, the application process for being a licensed business in this area, and looking at the testing protocols and establishing minimum standards for packaging and labeling of cannabis products. There's really a lot of work that's going to be done. There will be a public comment period once the commission has drafted its regulations. So the public will be able to see these regulations and be able to comment on them and provide their insight. What should be included and how our cannabis market really should be run in New Jersey. I'm really excited about the opportunity that lies ahead of us. A lot of work to be done, but really confident that with our strong allies in the industry and on the ground and public officials, we can really build something that works for New Jerseyans and keeps equity at the heart of these conversations.
Diana, would you be able to just comment a little about the tax that was put into the ballot so people can know? Because I know I got a couple of people asking that question.
Yeah, the ballot question did specify some of the basics around what the retail sales tax would be for cannabis products in New Jersey. And the legislature is kind of putting that into the laws now. And so there is also room for additional, I should say, call it fees and application fees or excise fees. But really, we're looking at trying to build a structure here in New Jersey that fosters competition, allows meaningful opportunities for people to seize the benefits, economic benefits of what we're creating here, and also reinvest in our communities here.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Diana, for that insight, and John Paulo for asking that question. You have your work cut out for you. I'm sure it's going to be no easy task. Knock on wood, though, for the vote to go well tomorrow. I'm sure everyone's tuning in and really excited for it. So thank you. Now, Diana will stay on as we move on to our next topic. Cannabis really is a unique industry, and I want to talk about that with our next question. Cannabis is a unique industry because it was really a political movement before it became an industry. No one had to really go to jail specifically for us to have smartphones in our pockets, for example. Respecting that history and acknowledging those pioneers who took a chance when the concept of a legal cannabis industry was a laughable dream is a core part of cannabis culture, credible rebels, if you will. So I'm privileged to bring on Michael Ryan, who was formerly incarcerated for a nonviolent cannabis crime, along with Sarah Fajardo, Policy Director of the New Jersey ACLU, and Jessica Gonzalez, General Counsel for Minorities for Medical Marijuana, to join Diana to discuss the concept of social equity, diversity, and inclusion in New Jersey cannabis. It's great to have you on, everyone. Now, asking the question is Helen Gomez Andrews. Helen, let's bring you online. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your question is, please?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Helen Gomez Andrews, and I serve on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at NCIA, where our goal is to engage and empower the cannabis community by cultivating partnerships with advocacy groups of similar goals. So if anyone out there wants to connect with us, learn about what we're doing, please reach out to our chair, info@khadijaadams.com. Also, I'm calling from Massachusetts, where I'm the founder of The High End, a vertically integrated business in Holyoke. As the first certified women and minority cannabis company in Massachusetts, we've benefited immensely from a commission that takes equity very seriously, listens to its constituents, and adapts. So my question to the panelists is, how do you define equity in cannabis, and what does an equitable and inclusive cannabis industry look like in New Jersey? What efforts are underway to include historically disadvantaged communities like the formerly incarcerated, people of color, and women? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Michael, would you like to start us off?
Yes, hello. Hello, Louis. First thing I'd like to do is thank Arcview for giving me this opportunity and encouraging me to tell my story. My name is Michael Ryan. I was born and raised in Roselle Park, New Jersey. I entered the cannabis space in 1968, and that began with an experiment. And it was a time of the time of perceived disinformation and distrust of authorities, and it was during the time of Vietnam War. Civil rights movement was blossoming. The women's movement was blossoming. So the stories that were being told about marijuana just begged to be examined, and that was my experiment. And what the experiment was trying it, and I quickly discovered that what was being said and what was being, what was the line was a one big fat lie, and so I began, I began distributing marijuana right away, quickly after learning that. And it wasn't as distributing in the sense of selling and profiting from it. It was, it was a matter of sharing it with people. And that quickly grew into providing it, and selling it. And that went on, I went from that passing the joint to being involved with some of the largest importation groups in the United States. And, they were importing hundreds of thousands of pounds of cannabis into the country at a time. And it was a very exciting time of my life, very profitable time of my life. And that all came to an end in 1994. I should say, when I was about 18 years old, I made the conscious decision that I was going to be that was going to be my career in distributing marijuana. It was my dream, and I knew, and my compatriots knew, that the only way that cannabis was going to be, the truth was going to be told, and it was going to be recognized, was the government was not going to come out and acknowledge what that truth was. The only way it was going to be to get people to understand it was by providing it. And that was at the basis of our movement to make it available. And back to 1994, May 18th, 1994, I was arrested. I found myself with a gun in my face, and I was not granted bail. And that began the beginning of a 20-year prison sentence in federal prison. I had 17 years and 5 months of it, which I spent in federal prison. I was stripped of all my assets, it was a wholesale. When I say stripped of all my assets, tools were taken out of my garage. It was that, invasive that anything that I owned was taken and sold or auctioned off. But the greatest loss I had was the loss of my family. I had two little boys. They were 2 years and 4 years old. I'm sorry. I wasn't reunited with them until they were 20 and 22. We did have visits. Visits were very awkward, and but I did. I have to hand it to my ex-wife, who, because of that tragedy, our relationship ended, and she was forced to move on and do what she could to survive with 2 children. And I, one of the I should mention that you're not sentenced based on what you do. I mean, I know that might sound you might be questioning that. It's not. Your sentences are not based on what you do. Sentences are based on what you won't do. And if you won't cooperate, if you won't, if you won't bring other, bring it, help the authorities, take down other people, you are demonized and the way and punished severely for that. I could have started. If you're willing to cooperate and set someone up, you can walk away scot-free. They'll pay you to do that. Otherwise, in my case, I resisted and was wound up with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence, which that mandatory sentencing law was what gives the government so much power in that respect. Anyway, that was the hardest thing that I had to explain to those 2 little boys, because when they would come to the visiting room, it went on for years. They would wonder why, ask me and encourage me. Why don't you tell on somebody? Why don't you? And it was, that explaining to them, what it means to stand behind your beliefs and to, and not destroy something that you believed in. That was a very hard and powerful lesson for them. They, eventually understood it. I'm grateful they both grew up to be fine young men. And that is, they were there for me the day that I walked out of prison, and we've been close ever since. I thank my wife for that, ex-wife. I still believe there's a struggle. I still believe that there is, that we haven't conquered this or, achieved the goals that I set out to achieve when I was 18 years old. And that's not going to be over until until the full value of cannabis is understood and accepted. So my answer to the equity question is the answer to equity lies in the truth being told and the harm that's been done to millions of people. Until that harm is acknowledged and the truth about cannabis is known, there's that is where equity lies. That's the foundation for equity. As far as the regulations go, I would like to suggest that there is a requirement of inclusion in the regulations, inclusion for the incarcerated, for the affected communities, for women. I think that is something that could be easily done. And I also think another, idea would be to give points for the harms that were done to people in this, based on the severity of their punishment. There's millions of people. I mean, I think every cannabis application should be required to include somebody that has suffered, because of these laws. And the points should be given to that application, based on the severity of that punishment. My story.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Michael. Really powerful to hear. We also have Diana, Sarah, and Jessica to perhaps comment more about what progress is being made and what's currently being done to address the social equity issue in New Jersey. Perhaps, Diana, you could follow up there, and then Sarah, and then Jessica, we could go on to you.
Sure thing. Thanks, Louis. And thank you, Michael, for sharing your story. Michael is one of those advocates and activists who has been on the ground pushing advocates like myself to go further and go harder. So thank you, Michael, for your encouragement to make sure that we keep our eyes on the ball here. Because Michael's absolutely right. People who are directly impacted by our prohibitionist laws have to be included here. Otherwise, we will have an unequitable system, and where's the integrity in that? So our regulations really should be crafted in a way that provide a meaningful opportunity for folks to get access to the jobs and to have meaningful access to operating a licensed business in this new marketplace. We want to see regulations and our laws that are at their heart and at their core really about transformation and about healing. And so that means that we need to be reinvesting in the communities of our future, whether it's related to cannabis or not. When we hear Michael's story, we really see how the collateral consequences that come along with an arrest do not affect just one person. They really take a toll on families and entire communities. So that's a whole community that has to be rebuilt, and we have to take affirmative steps to do that work. And now I'll turn it over to Jessica and Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for that powerful framing, and that frame really gets to the core of why ACLU, through many amazing folks, including Diana Wainu, really got into this fight, right, to end really harmful criminalization of a substance that many folks do not think should ever have been illegal, and start to repair and start to extend opportunity for folks who have been harmed through the criminalization, right, of cannabis. And so in New Jersey, we know that there's over 30,000 arrests made every year. We know that there's intense racial disparity related to cannabis arrests in New Jersey. And so ACLU is really proud to work with activists and advocates, so many of whom are on this panel today, to push forward legalization. And we know that the legislative process is a really tough one. It's for New Jersey, it's been years in coming. We've been working with a group of advocates through a coalition called New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform for many years, pushing forward the idea of legalization and trying to get it into the mainstream of legislative conversation. And it wouldn't be possible without so many voices at the table. And so, you know, kind of looking forward, tomorrow we're poised to see a vote, as Diana said, on legalization legislation that contains some provisions that create windows for equity and opportunity for folks most harmed by the war on drugs, and a decriminalization bill that also contains some powerful provisions that will help reduce arrests, will help clear some sentences, will help clear some pending charges for folks, will help extend expungement for folks who have had criminal legal consequences for engaging in possessing or selling cannabis. And so, you know, it's been an ongoing fight, and I see a question in the chat. What are some of the details of the provisions for social reform? So Diana covered the social equity excise fee that was included in legislation just this year after immense public engagement and public outcry for funds to be invested in communities harmed by the war on drugs, and to try to extend opportunities for reparative work. And so we know that the structure creates the opportunity for the commission to put forward that fee. We may see revenue come forward in the next few years as the market gets up and running, and investment starts to happen, but it's something that we all have to keep our eyes on. And I know that Diana will be keeping her eye on it, and advocates are here to help engage community, make sure that people in what is created in the legislation impact zones, so communities that have been historically severely over-policed for cannabis and for other really racially disparate arrests in New Jersey, are able to access some measure of relief. So things that we're looking forward to kind of continuing to work on with everybody as the ACLU are making sure that people with criminal records are able to enter into the industry, have access, and really participate fully and have ownership in the industry. We're still looking forward to additional criminal legal relief in forthcoming bills, hopefully. So I'm going to stop there. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I'm really heated and excited and just really, you know, passionate about making sure that we, New Jersey, we all on this panel, we do it right. We're right on the eve of a vote. Hopefully it doesn't get snowed out.
So I will jump in here. So thank you. So I get to follow these lovely ladies. So I'm Jess Gonzalez, outside General Counsel for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I also sit on the policy committee for the Minority Cannabis Business Association. And during the daytime, I am a cannabis attorney at a law firm in New Jersey. So I've been working on this issue, I think, for almost close to 3 years now, but I think in the cannabis world that like equates to like 10 years in dog years. But New Jersey consistently ranks in the top 3 states in the country for highest cannabis arrests. So given its very active participation in the criminalization of cannabis, it was imperative that social equity be the main act when it comes to laws and regulation and not just an afterthought. And I think social equity has become a buzzword in this industry. It's been diluted just based on how it's been used, and it means different things to different folks. But my definition of social equity is really establishing a statutory and regulatory framework that is centered, and big emphasis on centered, around repairing and uplifting the communities that were most harmed by cannabis prohibition, namely the Black and Latino communities, while also providing them with resources and meaningful opportunities to participate in the legal market if they want to. And there has been a tremendous push for advocates in terms of social equity. If you look at where we were when A21 was introduced and the word social equity didn't appear once in 95,000 words, to where we are now, there has been a lot of progress. And what I used to tell folks is, I truly can't promise you perfection, but I will try to strive as much as I can for progress in this bill and on the regulatory level as well. And I do want to highlight, because I get a lot of questions of how can I participate, how can I help out, in this effort. One thing that I did that I helped, I authored and I organized was a social equity advocate letter. And we actually had over, I think, 26 organizations sign on. So from the ACLU to the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association to NJ Policy Perspective to national organizations such as Women Grow, CWCB Expo, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and the Minority Cannabis Business Association. And these were 6 acts that range from creating a social equity applicant status to earmarking funds for social equity applicants, and also asking for the Office of Minority, Disabled Veterans, and Women's Cannabis Development to oversee the allocation of those funds. So to have 25 organizations really sign on to 6 social equity asks is really indicative of both local and national dedication to social equity, such that I am inspired and motivated to keep going, because I do see that a lot of folks really are in line with what we want to see. However, the cornerstone of really any social equity program, much of the success that we haven't really seen in other states, and I know I saw a question in there that there's always legislation, but the implementation has always been, pretty disastrous. That has particularly and historically been the case, and I'm hoping that here in New Jersey that won't be, but I do have my utmost faith in Diana to really lead the charge in that. So while we did succeed in certain areas, there is still a lot of work to be done on the regulatory level, and so I always want to remind folks that the final iteration of A21S21 really isn't the end-all be-all. We still have regulations that we'll be able to work on, but currently, as it stands, certain provisions in the bill range from percentage allocation, so 15% for minority certified businesses, 15% for disabled veterans and women certified businesses. There are conditional licenses as well. There are micro licenses as well, which I'm very happy to see will now be able to convert to full scale after 1 year. But probably what's my favorite part about the bill is the creation of this Office of Cannabis Development that I spoke about earlier, because this office is specifically designated to implement and report and really measure social equity efforts in New Jersey, such that I do believe there will be that sort of transparency that I feel a lot of folks really are asking for. So my hopes is that I will see that office, working with the commission and working with different advocacy groups here in New Jersey to be able to provide the capital, the access to professional services, and the technical assistance, but most of all, the education to really ensure that these communities that have been impacted really do have the tools that they need to succeed. And I guess the message that I really want to get across to a lot of my skeptical folks out there about social equity is that there are a lot of people who have been working on this, and very prominent groups that have really taken a huge undertaking to bring this forward. And so the best thing really that at this point anybody can do is really, speak up and let us know really, what you would want to see in terms of, regulations. Because what I tell people is, your business better than a lot of us, and what opportunities you want to see, and which opportunities you're blocked out from. So I encourage everybody to participate in your own rescue and get involved in the conversation, because people are listening, and I know that people don't think that they are. But if you take a look at the progress from where we were first week of November to where we are now, it's a significant amount of progress that I think should be celebrated.
And Louis, if I may, I just want to quickly build upon something that Jessica said, because I think it's crucial. And she said that, talking about how the social equity impacts are actually evaluated. And yes, like we have jurisdictions that have struggled. They have encountered stumbling blocks as they pursue equity. But we're talking about trying to undo decades of a war on drugs. That does not happen overnight, right? And so even the longest standing regulated legal market in the United States, Colorado, has only been online for 6 years. So I want our participants here to really understand that if we're talking about equity is a long-term game, right? And so anybody who's seeking to see overnight results needs to, I think, recalibrate a little bit because the war on drugs was a long-term vision, and we need to be equally as dedicated and equally as fierce with undoing those harms and advancing racial and social justice in our communities. And so as we stand up a brand new regulated industry here in New Jersey, we have to be willing to lean into this space that's going to be new for us to do some affirmative good for our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Helen. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for that discussion. For many of us, this is a re-legalization movement, right? Not a new one, because for so much of human history, we've coexisted peacefully with cannabis. It's only in the last 100 years we've made this plant illegal. So I'm glad that we're able to lend at least this short opportunity to hear about the work being done to right the wrongs and what lies ahead. So thank you very much, everybody. Now for our next topic, we're going to step outside of New Jersey for just a minute. One of the reasons why New Jersey is so interesting and has gotten so much attention from so many people is because of its impact to other states. The population of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania combined, for example, rivals that of California. And New Jersey has more scientists and engineers per square mile than anywhere else in the world, which provides a unique ground for innovation in cannabis and biotech, medical applications, and more. So to explore this topic, we have David Abernathy, VP of Consulting here at the Arcview Group. Welcome aboard, David.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And to ask this question, we have Aaron Ray, lifetime member of the Arcview Group. Aaron, great to have you online with us as well.
Thank you, Louis. Again, I'm Aaron Ray. I'm a managing partner with ProClinical Group. We provide executive search and consulting services for the life science space, as well as medicinal cannabis. I'm also a co-founder of STM Canna, and as Louis mentioned, a lifetime member of Arcview. My question, David, is how will and how do you see the New Jersey cannabis legalization impacting the legalization efforts in neighboring tri-state area states, New York and Pennsylvania? And where do those states currently sit in regards to the legalization process?
Sure. Great question. New Jersey is absolutely a catalyst for New York and Pennsylvania, as well as other states in the Northeast, really getting their programs in gear. I think a lot of those states had already been considering legalization and trying to figure out how to do that. New Jersey's legalization initiative lights a fire under those states to really move more quickly. So we saw Governor Cuomo come out and say right after the New Jersey election that cannabis was going to be legalized for adult use in New York, probably next year. We also expect the same out of Pennsylvania, that they'll try to push forward a legalization initiative in 2021. I think one of the really interesting things to look at, because so many of the mature cannabis adult use markets are on the West Coast, where states are just geographically very large, there's less of this tendency for folks to drive from one state to another to purchase things. And in some of the more clustered East Coast states, we do see that kind of behavior. I've spent quite a bit of time in Vermont, and it is common practice for people in Vermont to drive to New Hampshire for alcohol because it's significantly cheaper there. So a really interesting thing to look at is how New Jersey and its neighbors actually regulate cannabis. Such a big part of the end price that consumers pay for cannabis is a function of the regulatory and tax structures that states implement. That it's possible that we'll see states on the East Coast that are undercutting other states in terms of price and getting business from those neighboring states as a result. So really the regulations don't exist in as much of a vacuum as they do in some of the larger Western states. So it'll be great to watch that. As far as legalization, I mean, as soon as the market is up and running in New Jersey, if New York and Pennsylvania haven't sorted their issues out, they're going to run into all sorts of really avoidable and unnecessary issues with enforcement. Absolutely, people from New York will travel to New Jersey to acquire cannabis and bring it back to New York. It would be great if that weren't a crime under New York law when they get back. So I really do think that New Jersey will accelerate this process, and that we'll see both of those other states, as well as perhaps more on the East Coast legalized next year and in the coming few years.
Thank you so much. The impact of New Jersey's legalization will have ripple effects for years to come, I'm sure. So great to hear your insights, David. It was a pleasure to have you on. Aaron, thank you too for being part of today's discussion as well. Thank you so much. Now our fourth topic we're covering today is going back to New Jersey to explore what parts of the New Jersey cannabis market will be on fire. Through the last 10 years, Arcview has been witness to every newly legalized adult use state, and it's safe to say that what's hot and what's not is unique to each state. So to help explore that for us, I'd like to bring on Scott Rudder, founder of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association and former mayor of Medford, New Jersey, Tara Misiu Sargente, who sits on the board of directors of the same New Jersey Cannabis Business Association, and Kelly Crossan, advisor to the Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo, and formerly of the Marijuana Policy Project and New Jersey Cannabis Industry Association. Scott, Tara, Kelly, welcome.
Thanks, Louis.
Yeah. And now let's bring on Derek Knudsen to ask his question. Derek, welcome aboard. Can you tell us more about yourself and your question, please?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Louis, and thank you to Arcview Group for allowing me to participate today. My name is Derek Knudsen. I'm the founding partner of Meta Talent Group, an executive search and recruitment company servicing the cannabis industry and other alternative industries. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and moved out to Colorado 5 years ago to support the global cannabis movement. And so today, I'm just curious what positions or verticals might be in highest demand with the newly legalized recreational market here in Jersey. Would that be geared more towards industry-specific positions in cultivation in the laboratory? Or is that going to be geared towards, legal compliant roles as teams look to navigate this newly and highly regulated market.
Scott, perhaps you'd like to kick us off here?
Yep, I saw Tara was speaking. Tara was on mute.
Tara, you're mute. Oh, there you go.
I'm unmuted.
There we go.
Scott, you want to go or should I?
You got it. Go ahead, Tara.
Okay, sorry. So Derek, that's a great question. In a post or during COVID environment, right now with a third of the country unemployed, I think people are really going to be looking in New Jersey for the green rush to come. And it's our responsibility to create jobs out. So we're not just bringing employees on, we're helping people, many whom have lost their businesses. A lot of small businesses have closed during COVID, are now given a new opportunity to start a business in the cannabis industry. And I think the best way we're going to do that is the micro license, which I helped create, can give opportunities to people to really live the American dream of owning their own small business. And they are creating jobs from the C-suite level, the giant corporations, right down to small.
Tara, do we still have you? Yes, we still have you. Your video was just freezing up there, so I just turned it off for you, but we still have your audio.
Okay, no problem. But yeah, so creating jobs from the seat right down to your trimmers and bud tenders, and the jobs will directly be related to availability. So the more licenses we see, Oklahoma put out 2,200 new dispensaries in the past 2 years. When we put up those numbers, that's the best way we create jobs. Cultivation is our one area where we have a cap. Would expect to see less employment opportunities in cultivation than certainly in processing or dispensing. But also, I think there's a lot of opportunity in third-party technology. I think we'll see third-party apps for delivery. Hopefully, we'll have that within the legislation, seed-to-sale tracking, payment processing, and then ancillary things like packaging. And what we've seen already is a rate in availability of service providers. So your lawyers, your accountants, your consultants have, through the previous rounds, all been vital to the industry. So whatever really your area of expertise, we will be creating an opportunity in the New Jersey cannabis industry.
Yeah. Tara, I'm going to pick up where you left off there and agree very strongly with everything you said. I think, the opportunities are really endless. I was fortunate enough to spend most of the COVID situation in South Jersey in a little beach town just south of Atlantic City. And everyone is interested in cannabis. Starting with Atlantic City as an impact zone, I mean, there's tremendous opportunity there for all different kinds of businesses. I saw several really interesting proposals for a cannabis pier. That would kind of encompass, education and retail and, some sort of consumption lounge, however that's decided. Of course, hoping that it's a local group that wins that, if it comes to fruition, that would be a wonderful thing for Atlantic City. But, even on the, street level retail, I mean, so many people are out of business, and it's like the perfect opportunity to really reimagine Atlantic City in an entirely new way. I mean, I think, a lot of people get caught in this, you're either going to cultivate, you're going to process, you're going to have retail, but, there are so many other businesses that haven't even been, imagined yet. So, I would say anybody, who's on this call and has some idea that, they haven't seen in another legal state, well, so what? Bring it. This is the place. We can really rebuild places like Atlantic City and further, there's, just so many ways to look at it. New Jersey is this, incredibly, it's actually the most densely populated state in the nation. And, we have rural areas that need redevelopment. We have, urban areas outside of Atlantic City, in the north too, that, need a lot of help. And then there are these small beach towns that, have their own sort of culture and approach to cannabis. And I think, that's exciting in and of itself, that there's no current New Jersey, culture of cannabis, and we get to to create that. I think it's an opportunity really for absolutely everyone. And I know Scott agrees with me, so I'm going to pass it along to Scott to finish up.
Kelly's right. No, it is. It's an opportunity for everyone, and that's what's so awesome about this industry, right? So you look at, if you ever toured a cultivation facility, a processing facility, visit a retail dispensary, or go to a testing lab, or if you've ever been to a professional kitchen, I mean, the skill sets run the gambit. So we're going to have PhDs, we're going to have mechanical engineers, we're going to have quality control experts, and then there's just going to be straight up people, opportunities for people who have they want to trim, they want a relaxing job, they want something that's not a lot of stress, and they can get involved in this industry. So there's always going to be something for everyone. And I think Tara, said earlier with regard to the ancillary market. We talk about the green rush, and I know a lot of folks, have heard these stories before, but, back in the day in the gold rush, the people who made the most money were the people selling Levi jeans and pickaxes, right? So look at this as this grand opportunity. Whatever your skill set is, there's a place for you in the cannabis space. Whatever, if you're an entrepreneur and you own a bakery or you own a cafe and you're into the food, processing would be an amazing place for you. I mean, there's going to be something for everyone, and that's what's really exciting about this. But take it a next step further, as the federal legalization federal legalization starts to happen, and more companies can jump in, getting more into the research side, more on the medical side. People are, it's much more open in Israel, of all places. You think about the Middle East. In Israel, of all places, the most research has been done than any other country. They're going back 50 years of research, and they're finding ways that they can use cannabis, different cannabinoids can actually kill cancer cells. So I know that's a little bit further down the path, but everything in this industry is special, and whatever your skill set is, if you're a PhD or you just like working 9 to 5, there's a place for you. But on the entrepreneurial side, there's so many more opportunities. And so I stress this one point over and over again as I talk to legislators and decision makers and people who will soon be decision makers, Diana. More is more, right? So we really want to create these economic opportunities. We need to have more businesses out there. So as we look at how we've done things in the past, there's a lot of lessons learned we can do to apply towards the future. So we want to create more jobs, more revenue for municipalities, more revenue for the state. Then we need to have more businesses out there. So I'm really looking forward to a very robust industry in New Jersey.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, was there something else that they wanted to add?
No, I just want to say thank you to Tara, Kelly, and Scott. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, and thank you, everyone. Really, I have to say, after spending years here at Arcview, seeing thousands of entrepreneurs come through in trying to raise capital, what you're saying really matches my experience when a new state comes online, like New Jersey. A lot of excitement along the supply chain, from retail to cultivation, but we can't forget about the opportunities that are ancillary to cannabis, whether it's tech or professional services, for example. As I like to say, it takes the suit and ties and the tie-dyes to make this all work. So thank you very much, everybody. Now, for our final topic today, last but not least, we'll be discussing the future of medical cannabis, which is really one of the roots of how we're able to have a legal cannabis industry in the first place. The experts joining us are Dr. David Nathan, Board President of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, and Ellie Siegel, CEO of Longview Strategic. Dr. Nathan and Ellie, welcome to our town hall.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, the person who asked this question, Alana Goldberg, is based out of Israel, where it's about midnight right now, but she asked me to ask the question on her behalf. But she can catch this call later, since this entire webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website at arcviewgroup.com/replays. If anyone listening in would like to recap or share today's webinar with your friends. So here's Alana's question. How will the legalization of adult use cannabis in New Jersey affect regulatory issues of medical cannabis use in New Jersey and surrounding states? Perhaps Dr. Nathan can go first, and then Ellie follow up.
Sure. Thank you so much, Louis, and thanks for the question out of Israel, the birthplace of my wife, actually. So as you said, I'm the founder and board president of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, which is an organization that does about what you would guess based on the name. And we are a nationwide organization, though we started here, and I started my advocacy in earnest with New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform, which Sarah Fajardo mentioned, and Diana Wainu was a key part of for years. I'm a psychiatrist in private practice here in Princeton, New Jersey for the past 22 years. I'm the director of continuing medical education for the Princeton Hospital on Route 1. I don't speak for them on cannabis policy. I'm also I'm a clinical associate professor at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. Oh, and by way of disclosure, I should say that I've served as a paid speaker and consultant to government, medical associations, industry, though I'll note I'm a free agent here in New Jersey. So New Jersey, patient access is going to improve. That's a key thing to keep in mind. And it's the reason that the CMMNJ, the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey, has been for adult legalization all the way through. There's often concerns about the potential for neglect of the medical cannabis market with the coming of adult legalization, but I would say there are several things that mitigate that and actually make it a big plus. First of all, I know that Diana Wainu and Jeff Brown, both of whom I know, will do a fantastic job in preserving and expanding access for medical cannabis patients. You know, we're the first Mid-Atlantic state to be legalizing for adults, and that's going to have a big effect by taking some pressure off of the supply chain. And while, of course, a physician like me always advocates that people getting medical care seek professional clinical help, I also am a firm believer that we should not be punishing people who choose to use cannabis on their own for any reason, whether it's medical or otherwise. And I think the example of other states really applies well here, which is that other states with their adult legalization, when you study the people who are coming out of the dispensaries, out of the adult dispensaries, they will tell you when asked that something like 60% of them are taking it for what they describe as medical reasons. So even if they're getting it from the adult dispensary, they may be taking it for back pain, for chemo-induced nausea, for a host of reasons. And so that expanded access is really important. You know, and I fully support the passage of the legalization bill tomorrow. I'm very hopeful that it's going to pass, and boy, I'm not sure what we'd do if it didn't. But I'll also note that limited home cultivation is an issue that I think we need to revisit in future legislation. You know, it's not in the state's interest to prevent individuals from having the ability to grow a few plants, especially if they're medical patients who need a particular strain that they may not be able to get at the dispensary. And I also think people of lower income certainly should be allowed to grow their own if they have a greater abundance of time than money. So I'm hopeful that that will also come along down the pike. But overall, it's the expanded access that's going to make the biggest difference. But with regulation, I think we also have a great opportunity, and a particular interest of mine is in proper labeling of cannabis products. And I think that those labels should be actually quite similar for both adult use and for medical use, because the medical patient should have the same access, or the access to the same information that adult users would also need. And so that's a project I'm working on. And for anybody out there who's interested in it, I've talked to a few of you. I'll be talking to more, and I would love for New Jersey to consider the packaging standards that Doctors for Cannabis Regulation has developed and now promote. Ellie?
I'll take it from there. I definitely agree with Dr. Nathan that there will be expanded access for patients. But I'd like to expand on that from a business perspective somewhat. My name's Ellie Siegel. I'm the CEO of Longview Strategic. It's a consulting firm focused on emerging cannabis markets. Right now, we have a keen focus on the Mid-Atlantic regions that have expanding markets and the application processes wherever licenses are being issued. I'm a lawyer with an MBA and postgraduate certificates in medical product development. and regulatory affairs and compliance for pharmaceuticals. So that's my background that I come to this question with. And as it's specific to New Jersey, it's as general as it could also be. Regulations and taxation primarily are going to determine the success of the retail medical cannabis market going forward. Essentially, the idea is that a medical marijuana market should be cheaper for the patients than personal use cannabis will be for consumers. So the goal is for taxes on medical marijuana to decrease over time. There's also distinction in products in the medical market, more so at this point for sure, as you can develop products that are condition specific. That all said, medical patients have historically been known to go down year over year when personal use comes online. Personal use removes the doctor as the gatekeeper, and adult use cannabis consumers will shift away from the patient model. So the personal use market is more convenient. Personal use sales will outpace the medical market, but the actual medical patient will still seek the quality, consistency, and pricing of the medical market. So that's important to note. In New Jersey, the current operators are medical ATCs focused on patients first, and the issues in supply will always come down to making sure that patients are secure ahead of personal use consumers. However, I think it is fair to say from a business perspective, existing medical operators reap the benefit of the notorious, sorry about that, early advantage. So we'll have to watch and see what New Jersey can do to make sure that the distinction can exist for real medical necessity. Instead of framing medical cannabis as it was previously, that is to say, comparing it to Colorado and places like Washington State and looking at what happened to their medical cannabis markets, I think it's important to focus on how it will be under legalization and access in the future. Since I think we're closer to a future where research allows for the creation of more targeted condition-centric medical products, the outcomes in New Jersey's medical market could look different than markets of the past. So I think as Diana addressed, it isn't clear when regulations will come exactly and what they'll look like. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I'm optimistic that the medical cannabis market in New Jersey could be a bit of an evolution. Not to say that it won't still be outpaced by personal use, but I hope that the number of pharmaceutical companies in New Jersey, the amount of research done in New Jersey, historically, this has been a core competency in New Jersey to develop medical products. I certainly hope that our medical market here shows a slightly different outcome in trajectory overall than in medical markets of the past.
And if I could just jump in very, very quickly to support a lot of what you've said. We've tracked all of the markets that have come online with adult use, and to date, all of the adult use markets that have actually started to spin up have had pre-existing medical markets as well. And we've seen in every case a slight decline in the medical market as adult use picks up, with a little tail moving towards a plateau. There have been a couple exceptions. California saw a big drop in medical, and the two primary factors that have affected how quickly the market shifts from medical to adult use have been the price differences between the two markets, as well as how easy it is to become a medical patient. In states that make you really jump through a lot of hoops or pay high fees to become a patient, the market moves towards adult use much more quickly. So it will be interesting to watch how New Jersey rolls out. One of the really nice things about legalization moving forward on a state-by-state basis is we've really gotten to see a lot of different conditions, a lot of different market conditions, a lot of different regulatory conditions and how they play out. New Jersey has a different kind of medical market than a lot of the states that have passed adult use and implemented it so far. So it'll be really interesting to watch that shift.
I think that's right. The one other thing to note, I think that's really important, is that I think this is obvious across the board, but it's worth saying here with respect to medical, we've seen the mistakes and we've seen, what has caused that in other markets. And so surely we can learn and be better going forward. And I do think that times have changed, right? The moment in history is different now than it was at those moments in time. And so what that means for the future of medical in New Jersey, I think is very positive. I'm optimistic that this will be a very sophisticated and research-backed, data-driven medical cannabis market over time.
And I agree with all of that. I will also simply add the abstract concept of stigma. As there becomes greater acceptance of both medical and adult use cannabis in New Jersey, the conversation will change, and the people wanting to do the research will have an easier time doing so. I think that people who choose to use cannabis will find that there's much less resistance. And so medical patients, I think, will benefit from the decrease in stigma overall.
Very true.
Standing. Thank you so much, David, Ellie, and Dr. Nathan, for helping us understand the future of medical cannabis in New Jersey. It's exciting to hear that patient access will improve in one shape or form. We always have to keep our medical cannabis patients in mind, so thank you very much. Now, before we close out today, I want to first thank each of the question askers and responders for being part of Arcview's first ever town hall. I thought it was fantastic to hear all of your discussions and your insights. We couldn't have made this happen without you, and it's been a pleasure having you speak and connect with the hundreds of people from our community who are watching today. Once I get my own coronavirus vaccine, I hope to make it out to New Jersey one day and see how it all develops for myself. But thank you so much for your time and expertise, everybody. Now, two things before we end. First, I'll be posting a poll up on your screen. Please, if you enjoyed, thank you, Erica. If you enjoyed our town hall today, I want to provide input on where we should go next for our next town hall, or would like to learn more about Arcview, please take a minute to complete our survey. We rely heavily on our surveys to ensure that we're bringing some of the best education to our investor and startup communities. And to close this out for the year and to tell you more about some of the exciting plans that we have for next year here at Arcview, I'd like to bring up Kim Kovacs, Arcview's CEO. Kim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Louis. And oh my gosh, what a great way to end the year. I am so grateful to all of you for coming on stage today to, mixing it up a little bit, having a little bit of a different format, taking the questions from the audience. Michael, sharing your story and making this personal. This is what cannabis is all about, at least for me. It's a personal journey. It's a personal story. I think it is for many of us, and just, getting in front of everyone and sharing that. So I do want to say just a few things before we end this crazy 2020 year. First of all, thank you, New Jersey. Thank you for hosting us and sharing your plans for legalization. Sometimes it's to get on the front end of this wave, but I think you are, and I think you're doing it very thoughtfully. And I just want to say thank you from the industry for doing that. I also want to say thank you to the over 15,000 people who have signed up for our programs this year. Seriously, 15,000 people have signed up for Arcview's access programs, our town halls, all these digital programs, and we certainly could not have done this without the support from our speakers like you, our sponsors like Transact First, the supporters who have contributed such incredible content and these thought-provoking conversations. I also want to give a shout out to the companies. The ones that are challenged right now starting their businesses, entrepreneurs who put their heart and soul into starting a cannabis company. It's not an easy journey. Right now, we have 170 companies that are raising more than $600 million on our platforms today. And you can see our ecosystem. So we touch companies at their early stage. We've got them a little bit later. We've got them on the way out the door when they're about ready to exit. But that's $600 million they need us to go in and invest. And last and certainly not least, I want to thank this incredible team at Arcview for letting me come in during this crazy year and take the helm. And so Louis and the entire team, thank you so much for this hard work and dedication that you've done. And so this slide that I have, and in true 21 Arcview style, we're launching something new. And what we're doing is we're doing two things. One is we have now an ecosystem. This is an interconnected ecosystem. We have Arcview Capital. We have Arcview Ventures. We have Arcview Consulting that we are actually going to be launching this week and introducing you to a few more team members, one of which is David Abernathy. So he's going to be front and center leading our Arcview Consulting team, along with the newbie to our industry and also to our team is Jason Malcolm. So you're going to be seeing and hearing from them a little bit more in 21. And then the bigger thing that I want to announce today too is that we're creating an alliance program. And we've been working with literally hundreds of different sponsors and different supporters. And we've had a chance to really get to know these people, like Transact First, like Alpha Root. But what we're doing is we're creating this alliance program for 21. And what that means is that we're going to come to you in a united front. We're bringing in sort of these top industry experts, these top service providers, people who are really going to be here to support the industry. And so I really want you to look out for our announcement in 21 with this great alliance program and these partners that we're going to tackle New Jersey, all the other markets. We're going to be there to support you. So with that, and I want to say happy holidays. Have a great new year. Adios to 20. I think we're all ready for that. And cheers to an incredible 21. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. So we'll be leaving this poll up just to give you a few minutes to wrap up here. But again, thank you so much for your time and attention, everybody. We'll see you in the new year. Thank you so much.